Welcome to the Atlantic Desk. I'm Athena Cross. Europe has an Iran problem. Not the one you think. Yes, the headlines are dominated by the U.S. and Israeli strikes that killed Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Yes, the images of retaliatory missile fire across the Gulf are dramatic. But if you look past the smoke, something else is breaking, something structural. For 70 years, the Transatlantic alliance has been built on a shared understanding of international law. We argue about tactics, sure, but we generally agree on the rules of the game. That agreement just collapsed. What we are seeing this week is a Europe that is fundamentally fractured, not just on policy, but on the basic question of legality. Germany says one thing. Spain says the exact opposite. Brussels is simply trying to hide. Today, I'm going to take you through the split that nobody is talking about and show you why this legal divide matters far more than the strikes themselves. First, let's establish exactly what happened, because the timeline is critical. In late February, the United States and Israel launched a coordinated series of massive airstrikes against Iranian command and control centers. The primary target was the leadership, and they succeeded. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was killed in the operation, but the cost was high. According to the Red Crescent, at least 555 civilians were killed in the initial bombardment. Iran's response was immediate. Within hours, waves of ballistic missiles and drones were launched against U.S. military bases in Bahrain, Qatar, and the UAE. And here's a detail most outlets missed. For the first time in history, NATO forces directly engaged an Iranian missile. A ballistic missile heading toward Turkish airspace was intercepted by Allied defenses coordinated through NATO's Norfolk Command. That is a historic first, the alliance actively defending its southeastern flank against a direct Iranian threat. Washington's justification for all of this was blunt. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth didn't mince words. He said the U.S. was acting, quote, regardless of what so-called international institutions say. He went further, mocking allies who, in his words, wring their hands and clutch their pearls, hemming and hawing about the use of force. That pearl-clutching comment wasn't directed at Tehran, it was directed at Europe, and it landed like a grenade in European capitals. So how did Europe respond? If you're looking for a unified Western position, you won't find it. What you find instead is a continent torn into three distinct camps. Camp 1 is the pragmatists, led by Germany. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz is visiting Washington this very week for critical trade talks. He needs President Trump's goodwill to avoid crushing auto tariffs. So his reaction was carefully calibrated. Merz said, "Now is not the moment to lecture our allies. Despite our reservations, we share many of their objectives." Translation, we're uncomfortable, but we can't afford to be angry right now. Camp 2 is the critics, led by Spain. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez didn't hold back. He issued a statement saying, "We reject the unilateral military action by the United States and Israel, which represents an escalation and contributes to a more uncertain and hostile international order." Sanchez is under pressure from his own left-wing coalition partners. But this also reflects a genuine Spanish doctrine that emphasizes UN mandates over unilateral force. Then there's the silent camp, France. President Macron has been uncharacteristically quiet. France has significant military assets in the region and its own history of intervention. Paris is keeping its head down, neither condemning the U.S. nor endorsing the strikes. In the UK, the Starmer government is walking the tightest rope of all, trying to maintain the special relationship with Washington while facing intense pressure from its own backbenchers to uphold international law. And the European Union itself, the institution that is supposed to speak for the bloc? In a painful press briefing on March 3rd, EU spokespeople spent nearly an hour dodging the central question. Was this legal? They simply refused to answer. Why? Because they know the answer is no. But the political cost of saying it is too high. This brings us to the core of the problem, the legal argument. This isn't just academic hair-splitting. This is about the rules that hold the world together. We have two leading legal scholars looking at the exact same event and seeing two different realities. Professor Marc Weller from Cambridge University and Chatham House is clear. He argues there is no available legal justification for the present sustained attack on Iran. His point is simple. International law permits force only in self-defense against an armed attack, not against a threat, not against a hostile posture. You cannot bomb a country because you think they might do something bad in the future. Weller warns that if we ignore this, we lose the moral high ground. He says, it will not be easily possible to oppose Russian aggression or Chinese expansionism if there are no clear principles left. But there is a counterargument. Professor Rosa Freedman from the University of Reading argues that law doesn't operate in a vacuum. She points out that Iran has spent decades threatening the region, violating nuclear safeguards, and destabilizing its neighbors. In her view, the strikes are lawful within the context of the purpose of the United Nations, which is to prevent nuclear proliferation and maintain peace. This debate exposes the awkward history of Europe's Iran policy. Remember the JCPOA, the nuclear deal? Europe spent 10 years building it. Trump killed it in 2018. Europe spent 5 years trying to resuscitate it. Iran violated it. Now the deal is a corpse that nobody wants to bury. The EU is trapped. It opposes Iran's regime. It sanctions Tehran for human rights abuses. But it also claims to be the guardian of the rules-based international order. You cannot claim to defend the rules while silently supporting a partner who openly mocks them. That is the European dilemma. So why should you care about a legal argument among professors? Because this isn't about Iran. It's about Ukraine, and it's about Taiwan. Think about the precedent being set here. If the United States claims the right to strike a sovereign nation preemptively because of a, quote, security threat without an imminent attack, what stops Russia from using the exact same logic? Vladimir Putin already claims Ukraine was a security threat. He claims NATO expansion was a hostile posture. Europe condemns Russia's invasion as illegal. But if Europe stays silent on the legality of the U.S. strikes on Iran, that word illegal loses its power. It starts to look like illegal just means done by our enemies. Look at Taiwan. If China blockades or strikes Taiwan, Beijing will claim it is removing a security threat. Europe will want to invoke international law to stop them. But if we have spent 2026 ignoring international law when it's inconvenient for Washington, Beijing will simply laugh. This is eroding transatlantic trust at a molecular level. When Defense Secretary Hegseth mocks European pearl clutching, he is telling Europe, your rules don't matter to us. Only power matters. And here is the danger for European leaders. Domestic populists are watching. In Germany, in France, in Spain, populist parties are already asking, if the Americans don't respect the rules, why should we follow them? Why are we sacrificing our economy for sanctions if the whole system is a sham? This fracture over Iran is weakening the political glue that holds the West together. And that is a far bigger threat than any missile Tehran can launch. Europe's Iran divide isn't really about Iran. It's about the future of the West. We are drifting into a world where rules are optional and alliances are transactional. For a continent like Europe, which relies on law rather than military might, that is a terrifying place to be.
This is the kind of story that often gets lost in the noise of explosions and breaking news banners. But here at the Atlantic Desk, our mission is to bring you the full picture, the structure beneath the events. If you found this analysis valuable, make sure you're subscribed. We'll be tracking the fallout from these strikes in the days ahead. Stay informed, stay ahead. I'll see you tomorrow. I'm Athena Cross for the Atlantic Desk.